Does it ever rain on your fire? It's become a family joke that every year when we go to Vogel State Park for our family vacation, one night during the week, it's our turn to cook and I will grill something. And the joke is that if I start to light the grill, it's going to start thundering and cloud up and rain. And so we have pictures floating around of past years at Vogel with me standing out by a grill with a large golf umbrella taped to a broom handle going through the handle of the grill so that the umbrella will stay in place so that I can cook in the rain. If the wood gets wet, if the fire gets rained on, it's really hard to have a fire. And you may already know this, but people will rain on your parade. People will criticize what you do. And sometimes it's really hard to stay fired up just because of that criticism. The Apostle Paul, I think, knew what that was. Paul generally was a very fired up fellow and generally was very optimistic and positive and talks about the secret of being content regardless of the circumstances. But maybe just so we'll know that Paul was real and Paul had the same kind of difficulties we do. You read these words in his second letter to the church in Corinth. In verse 8 he says, "We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself." Paul knew what it was to have difficulty, and some of that was persecution. In chapter 11 of this same letter, he talks about prison and shipwreck and beatings and famine and cold and all the things he'd gone through. But it's important to notice at the end of it, he says, besides all this, I face daily the pressure from all of the churches. When you read 2 Corinthians, you read a letter where Paul is having to defend himself against criticism, those who questioned his apostleship, those who questioned his ability, those who criticized his speaking ability. He was too plain, he was too simple, he wasn't eloquent. Paul knew what it was to be criticized and how it dampens your enthusiasm, and so that he could say, I despaired even of life. It got to be overwhelming. What do? How do you cope with criticism? We'll talk about that just a little bit. Mostly I really want to know what you have to say, but I want to make this observation before we get to that point. Other people will criticize, other people will point out your flaws, and sometimes people love to point out your failures, mistakes that you make. But probably for most of us, our severest critic, our most constant critic, lives inside our own head. We know our flaws, we know our failures, and sometimes we replay those to ourselves until we get to the point where there's no point in me trying. I'm not going to do any better. I'm always going to mess up. And we tell ourselves these distorted things that get our thinking off track and discourage us. So what do? How do you cope with criticism? Well, number one, stop doing it to yourself. And when other people do it, or when you're doing it to yourself, I think grace is probably the best antidote. Grace is undeserved favor. It's being loved and treated kindly whether you deserve it or not, even if you have failed. And if we really can trust in grace, it's okay to admit failures. It's okay to have them. It's okay if somebody points them out. It doesn't change my relationship with God whatsoever. And so maybe just focusing on grace and reminding ourselves, okay, so I didn't do that so well. Maybe I could have done better, but I'm okay. God still loves me anyway, and God still forgives me anyway. You tell me, how do you keep criticism and failure and your own shortcomings from dampening your enthusiasm for putting out your fire? Love to see what you have to say. Look forward to your comments.